The town of Red Hollow didn't remember when it was built, only that it never forgave. The wind dragged dust through its streets like a warning, rattling old signs and empty bottles, whispering names of men who never made it out. By sundown, the sky bled orange and gold, and shadows stretched long enough to tell the truth. That's when he rode in, alone, no posse, no badge, no hurry. His horse was tired, same as him, but neither stopped. Folks looked from behind sagging shutters, curious but cautious. Everyone in Red Hollow knew trouble when it walked through the saloon doors. He dismounted in front of a wooden building marked General Store and Post, tying his horse with hands that were steady, but eyes that carried storms. The town had changed since he left, or maybe it was just him who had changed. His hat shadowed his face, but it didn't hide the scars, the anger, or the truth that came with survival. A few townsfolk nodded politely. He returned a nod, but it didn't reach his eyes. Every footstep on the dry dirt street sounded like a warning shot. He was here for something, and it wasn't gossip. Inside the saloon, laughter and piano tunes faded when he entered. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, as if the air itself respected or feared the weight he carried. The bartender, an older man with whiskey lines carved into his face, wiped his hands on a rag, glancing up. "You don't look like you're from around here," he said. The man didn't answer, just poured himself a drink from his own flask. The sound loud enough to command attention. The story wasn't new. Red Hollow had its legends, most whispered behind closed doors. He had left 10 years ago, chased out by a gang led by a man named Clayton Blackthorne, a name that had haunted him like a curse. Blackthorne wasn't just a criminal. He was a shadow over everyone's soul in this county. And now the shadow had a price to pay. He walked to the piano and set his flask. Down beside a glass of bourbon, already sweating in the sunlit dust, a small group of men watched silently, unsure if they should intervene. One of them, younger, braver than wise, tried to joke. "You look like trouble, stranger." Trouble smiled thinly across his face. "Not trouble, just overdue justice." The words cut sharper than any bullet. Silence fell. The kind of silence that only the desert knows, heavy and patient, waiting for something inevitable to happen. And it did. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a rider appeared, a messenger or a warning. The dust plume meant Blackthorne's men were coming, fast but unorganized. That was all he needed. He finished his bourbon, slid the glass back, and spoke quietly, almost to himself. Time to settle accounts. The first fight didn't wait. Men barged in rough and loud, their boots stomping like thunder over the floorboards. Chairs toppled, glass shattered, guns emerged like extensions of their own rage. But he was ready, every movement precise, every breath controlled. One by one, the men realized this wasn't just a drifter looking for coin or drink. This was a storm that had learned patience in silence. Shots rang, echoes bouncing off wooden walls. When it was over, only dust and the smell of gunpowder lingered. The town had its attention now. Nobody in Red Hollow would forget that day. By nightfall, he walked back to his horse, the horizon bleeding red as the sun dipped. Red Hollow was watching, whispering, and maybe, just maybe, hoping. They didn't know if he would bring peace or more chaos, but they knew the past had returned to collect its debts. He mounted silently, letting the wind carry him toward the edge of town, where the next confrontation waited. Every step of his horse was a promise. The reckoning was far from over, and Red Hollow's shadows were about to meet the man who refused to be forgotten. The wind had shifted by morning, carrying a sharper edge. Red Hollow's streets glimmered under a pale, unforgiving sun. He woke outside the saloon, leaning against his horse, thinking in quiet snapshots of the past, the betrayal, the silence, the burning of his family's land at the hands of Clayton Blackthorne. Memories were no longer ghosts, they were fuel. The town, with its crooked signs and peeling paint, had seen decades of survival, but nothing had prepared it for what was coming. Clayton Blackthorne's gang was approaching. Dust plumes rippled like warning flags on the horizon. He studied each cloud, timing their movements, reading patterns learned over years of desert life. A showdown wasn't just inevitable, it was a ritual, and he intended to survive it. The townsfolk peered through windows, their curiosity mingling with fear. They had heard rumors of the man returning. whispers of vengeance riding faster than the wind. Some hoped he would bring salvation, others prayed he wouldn't bring death. Both would get the same answer. He didn't wait for mercy. He positioned himself behind a stack of crates outside the general store, eyes scanning the horizon, fingers hovering near his revolver. When the first of Blackthorn's men appeared, they underestimated him. They were armed, confident, laughing, thinking his solitude meant weakness. It didn't. The first gunshot cracked the silence like a whip. Dust erupted. Bodies fell. The staccato rhythm of gunfire echoed off wooden buildings. Chaos consumed Red Hollow. Horses neighed, children cried from behind shuttered windows, and adults ducked for cover. But amidst the destruction, he moved like a shadow, precise and terrifying. Every shot was measured. Every movement accounted for. It wasn't rage. It was justice, delivered slow and cold. Clayton Blackthorn arrived last, riding a jet-black stallion, the sun slicing his silhouette into a figure as menacing as the legends. He slowed at the edge of the dust, surveying the carnage with a crooked grin. "You've got guts," he called out, voice carrying over the wind. "But guts won't save you." Red Hollow didn't sleep after the bloodshed. Towns like that never do. They pretend to rest, but beneath the creaking doors and flickering lanterns, memories pace back and forth like restless horses. The cowboy rode out at dusk, yet his presence stayed behind, lodged deep in the bones of the place. By midnight, whispers had already reshaped the truth. Some said he was a ghost. Others said a devil. A few, braver souls said he was justice wearing a hat. But the truth was heavier than all of it. Clayton Blackthorn was dead, and with him fell a fragile order that had kept worse things buried. Because Clayton hadn't ruled alone. He had answered to something older, richer, and far more ruthless. Miles away, under a moon stretched thin like a blade, the cowboy made camp near a dry riverbed. He cleaned his revolver slowly, methodically, the way men do when they know their fight isn't finished. The fire crackled low. His horse grazed nearby, restless. He had won the battle Red Hollow would remember, but not the war he had returned to finish. Clayton was only a name on a longer list, and the list had been written the night his home burned, the night his father died begging men who laughed, the night the West taught him mercy was optional. The law had been there then, watching, silent. It always was. At dawn, riders appeared on the ridge. Not outlaws, not townsfolk. These men rode straight-backed, coats clean, rifles polished. Railroad men. That's when he knew. The railroad had funded Clayton, used him, protected him. Red Hollow wasn't just a town. It was a chokehold on land they wanted cheap and empty. Clayton had been the knife. The railroad was the hand. The cowboy stood slowly, not reaching for his gun. Not yet. He counted 6 riders, enough to kill him, enough to make a point. Their leader dismounted first, boots sinking into the dust like he owned it. "You caused a disruption," the man said calmly, adjusting his gloves. "We don't like disruptions." The cowboy studied him, eyes unreadable. "Funny," he replied, voice low and even. "Neither do I." The man smiled thinly, the smile of someone who had never needed to pull a trigger himself. "Red Hollow will be dealt with," he continued. "You, however, are finished." The wind howled then, carrying the weight of the choice hanging in the air. The first shot didn't come from either of them. It came from the ridge behind the railroad men. Then another, and another. Chaos erupted. 2 men fell before they understood what was happening. The cowboy moved instantly, rolling, firing, disappearing into dust and motion. But this wasn't his doing. Someone else was hunting now, someone who had been waiting longer than him. When the dust cleared, only one railroad man remained, wounded and shaking. From the ridge descended a woman on horseback, rifle still smoking. Her eyes were sharp, older than grief, younger than mercy. She introduced herself simply. "My family farmed north of here," she said. Before the railroad, he understood immediately. The West was full of people like them, survivors stitched together by shared loss. She warned him the railroad wouldn't stop. Red Hollow was only the beginning. Towns were falling quietly, families disappearing, land changing hands without blood on the paperwork. "You can ride away," she said. "Most do." He looked toward the horizon, where the railroad tracks cut the land like scars. Riding away had been an option once. It wasn't anymore. They rode together toward Red Hollow as the sun climbed. The town looked smaller now, weaker but alive. The people gathered as they entered, fear and hope mixing in equal measure. He spoke to them for the first time, his voice carrying across the square. He told them the truth about the railroad, about Clayton, about what was coming. Some wanted to run, some wanted to fight. Most just wanted to survive. He didn't promise safety. He promised resistance. In the West, that was the only honest currency. That night, Red Hollow prepared. Guns were cleaned, windows boarded, riders sent. The woman took position on the water tower. He stood alone in the street as lanterns flickered like nervous stars. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about drawing a line so deep it couldn't be erased. When the railroad came again, they would not find a forgotten town. They would find a reckoning. And somewhere far down the line of steel and greed, men in suits would soon learn what Clayton Blackthorne learned too late. The West remembers. And some debts don't expire.